The last thing my grandmother ever said to me before everything changed was, "That ring wasn't yours to touch. Put it back before it's too late." She said it with a kind of fear I'd never seen in her eyes before. Not anger, fear. I should have listened, but I didn't. I slipped the ring on anyway, right in front of her, like it was mine to claim. And later that night, just before midnight, the phone rang. It wasn't a number I recognized. When I picked up, I heard a woman crying, not just sobbing, wailing. And the worst part? I knew that voice. I hadn't heard it in years, but I would never forget it. It was my mother, the same mother who had died 6 years earlier. From that moment on, I never took the ring off again. Not once. I hadn't seen my grandmother Cecilia since my mom's funeral. I was 12 then. Now I was 18 and back in the same dusty farmhouse that used to give me nightmares as a child. My dad had sent me there for the summer after his new wife told him I needed a reset, whatever that meant. I didn't argue. I was tired of the fake smiles and quiet dinners in our house anyway. I thought maybe I'd find something real out here. Instead, I found silence. Heavy, haunted silence. The house hadn't changed. Same creaky floors, same yellowed wallpaper peeling at the corners. Even the old rocking chair by the fireplace still made that slow, groaning sound as it moved. Cece didn't say much when I arrived. She looked me up and down, nodded once, and went back to slicing something in the kitchen. She had aged, but not in the usual way. Her eyes had sunk deeper into her face. Her lips stayed pressed tight, like she was holding something back constantly. She was wearing 3 layers even though it was July, and around her neck, she wore a silver chain tucked into her blouse. I asked what was on it. She didn't answer. That night, I slept in what used to be my mom's childhood bedroom. The wallpaper was covered in faded flowers, and there was an old twin bed pushed up against the window. I lay there, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly above me, feeling like something was watching. Maybe it was just the house. Maybe it was Cece. She hadn't said a word to me all evening. She didn't ask about school or friends, just left a plate of boiled potatoes on the table and told me not to go upstairs, past the 2nd floor. That was her space, she said. Off limits. The second night, I heard a door creak open around midnight. I got up to check, thinking maybe she had fallen or needed help. But her door was shut, and the sound had come from the hallway next to my room. That's when I saw a thin crack of light shining from beneath a door I hadn't noticed before. It looked like a closet at first, but the doorknob was rusted and oddly shaped, like it didn't belong. Something about it pulled me in. I turned the knob, and to my surprise, it wasn't locked. Inside, I found a small chest tucked into the corner, beneath a stack of old blankets. I opened it out of curiosity, thinking maybe it was some family keepsake. Inside was a small velvet box, black, soft to the touch, but freezing cold. I held it in my hands for a long minute, debating whether or not I should open it. But of course I did. I was always the kind of girl who needed to know what everyone else was afraid to find. Inside the box was the ring. It looked old, but untouched by time. The stone was dark, almost black, but with flecks of red and green deep inside, like a fire trapped in glass. The band was twisted gold, and as soon as I touched it, a strange warmth pulsed through my fingers. It didn't feel evil. It felt familiar, like it belonged to me. I put it back in the box and tucked it under my bed, telling myself I'd forget about it, but I couldn't sleep after that. Not really. The next morning at breakfast, I asked Cece about the ring. I didn't even say I found it. I just asked if she had any old jewelry from my mom. Her spoon stopped halfway to her mouth. She looked straight at me, her face hard. "Some things should stay buried," she said, "especially when they've already been taken." I didn't know what that meant. I still don't fully. But something in her voice made the hairs on my arms rise. I wanted to press her for more, but she stood up and left the room before I could ask anything else. Later that day, While she was tending to the garden, out back, I went to my room and opened the box again. The ring was still there, still warm, still beautiful. I slipped it onto my finger. It fit perfectly. That was the first time I wore it. And it was the last normal moment I would ever have in that house. The first time I wore the ring, I felt powerful, not in a superhero kind of way, but like something inside me clicked into place. It fit so perfectly, like it had been made just for me. I wore it the entire afternoon without thinking much about it, even as I helped Cece chop vegetables in the kitchen. She didn't seem to notice it at first. Or maybe she did and chose not to say anything. But after dinner, as I was walking past her in the hallway, her hand suddenly shot out and grabbed my wrist. Her grip was tight, stronger than I expected for a woman her age. She didn't yell. She didn't ask. She just stared at the ring and whispered, "That wasn't yours to touch. Put it back before it's too late." Her voice cracked like she was trying to stay calm but couldn't. I pulled my arm away. "It's just a ring," I said, trying to laugh. "You're acting like it's cursed or something." She didn't laugh. Her face turned pale and hard. "Don't mock what you don't understand," she said. Then she turned her back and walked down the hall without another word. I stood there, staring at the ring, wondering what she wasn't telling me. I thought maybe it had belonged to my mother, and Cece was just being her usual dramatic self. But even then, I knew something was off. That night, I put the ring in the drawer next to my bed, telling myself I'd return it to the box in the morning. But sleep didn't come easy. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to a soft noise, like someone whispering. It wasn't clear, just a low, murmuring sound that came from the walls, or maybe the hallway. I sat up and listened, thinking it might be the wind. But then I heard it again. A whisper so close, it felt like it was right by my ear, even though I was alone. My chest tightened, and I reached for the drawer. The ring was still there. I held it in my hand, and as soon as my skin touched the metal, the whispering stopped. That was the first night. The next day, Cece avoided me. She barely spoke during breakfast and stayed outside most of the afternoon. I tried asking her again about the ring, about whether it belonged to my mom, but she just shook her head and said, "You ask too many questions, Aria. That's always been your weakness." I went back to the room and wore the ring again. I couldn't explain why. It felt wrong not to. I kept telling myself I'd take it off later, but I didn't. And every time I did, the whispers stopped. At first, I thought I was imagining things. Maybe it was stress or this creepy old house playing tricks on me. But by the third night, I knew something was happening. The dreams started soon after. They weren't normal dreams. They were sharp, vivid, and emotionally intense. I saw a wide open field surrounded by trees, and in the middle of it stood my mother. Her back was always turned to me, her dress soaked at the bottom like she'd waded through water. She never spoke, but I knew it was her. I could feel her sadness, her longing. I'd wake up crying without understanding why. Sometimes, when I tried to call out to her in the dream, I'd hear a voice behind me say, "She remembers you, but you forgot her." By the end of that week, Cece's behavior changed. She started burning herbs in every room, walking slowly through the house while chanting something under her breath. The smell was thick, smoky, and sweet, and it clung to my clothes, my hair, everything. She nailed tiny symbols over the windows and placed bowls of salt in the corners. When I asked her what she was doing, she finally looked me in the eye and said, "Trying to protect you." "From what?" I asked. "From what you've invited in." Her words chilled me. That night, the whispers came again, louder this time. They didn't feel random anymore. They felt directed, like they were calling my name, like something wanted me to come closer. I didn't tell Cece. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of being right. But that same night, the phone rang. We didn't have cell service in the house, and the landline hadn't rung once since I arrived. But just past midnight, it came to life. I ran downstairs and picked it up. There was no number on the ID, just static at first. Then, faintly, crying, the kind of crying that came from deep inside someone's soul. Then a voice, broken, shaking. Arya? It was my mother's voice. I froze. My throat closed. The crying continued. I couldn't speak. Come find me, she said. Then the line went dead. I stood there in the dark kitchen, the phone still pressed to my ear, the dial tone echoing in my head. Behind me, I heard the creak of the rocking chair. I turned around. It was moving, but Cece wasn't in it. I didn't sleep at all after that phone call. I stayed in bed with the covers pulled up to my chin, staring at the door, waiting for something to move or speak or reach for me again. But the house stayed quiet, too quiet. The kind of silence that doesn't feel empty, but full, like it's listening. In the morning, I found Cece already awake, sitting in the kitchen with her Bible open, her fingers running along the same verse over and over again. She didn't say anything when I walked in. I sat down across from her and finally asked the question I should have asked the first day. Did my mom wear this ring? She didn't look up. Her voice was hoarse when she answered, yes. And I told her the same thing I told you. To put it back. Why? What is it? What does it do? Cece closed the Bible and set it aside like she knew the conversation was coming and had dreaded it. It's not about the ring, she said. It's about what it opens. Your great-grandmother wore it. So did her mother before that. We come from a bloodline that carries something not meant for this world. That ring doesn't curse you. It invites you. Invites me to what? To remember. I felt a chill go through my spine. The crying phone call, the dreams, the whispers. It all started to make a twisted kind of sense. This wasn't just about history or superstition. It was about memory, about something buried so deep in my family's past that no one dared to speak of it. You said she wore it. My mom. What happened to her? Cece stared at me for a long time before answering. She wore it. She remembered. And then she changed. Started wandering at night, talking to people who weren't there. She said your father couldn't understand, that she didn't belong in this world anymore. One night, she left the house barefoot. They found her body 2 days later, near the edge of the woods. But I always believed it wasn't her anymore. I swallowed hard. What do you mean it wasn't her? She leaned forward, lowering her voice like the house might be listening. Sometimes when something takes you, it leaves a piece of itself behind, just enough to make people think you're still you, but you're not. Not really. My hands were shaking. I looked down at the ring on my finger. It was still warm, always warm. That night, I made my decision. I didn't care what Cece believed. I needed answers, and I needed them from the only person who could give them to me, my mother. If she was calling to me, it meant she wasn't completely gone. Maybe she was trapped. Maybe I could help her. I wasn't ready to believe she was lost forever. I waited until Cece went to bed. I could hear her in the next room, whispering prayers over and over, her voice breaking every few sentences. I slipped out of bed, grabbed a flashlight, and walked out the back door into the yard. The air was heavy and still. The sky above was cloudy, but the moon pushed through just enough to light the path that led into the woods. I followed it without thinking. My feet moved on their own. The ring on my finger felt like it was pulsing, like a heartbeat not my own. The woods were quiet, but not peaceful, more like waiting. I walked deeper, past the trees and the old fence that separated Cece's property from the field beyond. That's where I saw it. A tree split straight down the middle by lightning, its trunk blackened and hollowed. I felt drawn to it. The air around it shimmered like heat on asphalt. Inside the hollow was darkness that didn't match the night. It was deeper, thicker, like it could swallow you whole. I stepped closer. That's when I heard her. Arya. It was her voice, my mother's, but not from the phone, not crying, calm, familiar, calling me like she used to when dinner was ready. I didn't hesitate. I reached out and touched the edge of the tree. A wave of cold flooded my body, and the world shifted. I was no longer standing in the woods. I was somewhere else, a place that looked like my grandmother's field, but twisted, darker, dreamlike, and in the center of it stood my mother. She was barefoot, wearing the same dress from my dream, her eyes locked on mine, full of sorrow and love and fear all at once. She raised her hand, reaching for me. I moved toward her. "I've been waiting," she whispered. "Now you remember." I wanted to ask her so many things, but my voice wouldn't come. Instead, I stepped forward, raised my hand, and reached for hers. But as I did, the ground beneath us shifted. The sky cracked like glass. Her face started to change. Her features melted, twisted, until I wasn't looking at my mother anymore. I was looking at myself, and behind that face, something was smiling. I stumbled back, heart racing, unable to process what I was seeing. The thing in front of me, wearing my face, stood perfectly still, its head tilted slightly, like it was studying me. The expression wasn't just a smile, it was a knowing grin, cold and cruel, like it had been waiting for me to finally arrive. My breath caught in my throat as it spoke again, this time in my exact voice. "You opened the door, Arya. That's all it needed." Its eyes were not mine. They were black, endless, reflecting no light. It wasn't a dream. I was awake. I was inside something real. The world around us started to ripple, as if reality was bending. The trees swayed, without wind. The grass beneath my feet darkened. In the sky, a shadow passed over the moon. Not a cloud, but something alive, circling above. I wanted to run, but my feet felt glued to the ground. My body was trembling, but something deeper inside me had gone completely still. The ring on my finger began to burn, not just warm, but searing, as though it was sinking into my skin. I looked down and saw the gold band tightening. I tried to pull it off, twisting and yanking, but it wouldn't budge. My skin blistered underneath, and I screamed. The thing with my face took a step closer. "This isn't about your mother anymore. It never was. She wore the ring and remembered, but she refused to obey. So we took her." It reached out its hand and pointed behind me. I turned, slowly, terrified of what I'd see, and there she was. My mother, standing at the edge of the field, her figure thin, worn, and barely solid, like a fading photograph. Her face was pale, eyes hollow, lips trembling. She didn't look like the woman I remembered. She looked like someone who had been trapped for years with no light, no time, no voice. I ran to her, ignoring everything else. She held up her hand weakly, warning me to stop. "No, Arya," she whispered. "Don't let it use you. That's how it lives. Through us." I fell to my knees. "I don't understand. I just wanted to talk to you. I wanted to find you." Tears streamed down her face. "I know. That's how it works. It lures us in with love and memory and grief, but it's not me. Not really. It only shows you what you want to see." I turned back to the creature wearing my face. It was laughing now, softly. "You asked for her. I gave her to you, but now it's my turn. You belong to me." Suddenly, the fields began to collapse inward, like the world was being pulled into a black hole. The ground cracked, light disappeared, and I could feel myself being dragged down, as if my soul was slipping from my body. My mother screamed, running toward me, but her form shattered like glass as she reached me. I could still hear her voice, faint, begging me to fight it. I closed my eyes, every part of me burning from the inside out. I thought of her hands, the way she used to braid my hair, the lullaby she sang to me when I had nightmares. I thought of her laugh, her scent, the way she held me the night before she died. I clung to those memories like a life raft. Then something shifted. The ring, still burning into my skin, let out a sound, a single crack, and then it broke. In that instant, the world around me shattered. The field, the figure, the dark sky, all of it blew apart like ash in the wind. I fell backward, gasping, choking, and suddenly I was lying in the grass behind Cece's house. The night was quiet again, the trees were still, and the ring was gone. I sat up slowly, disoriented. My hand was blistered, but the pain was fading. I looked around. Everything seemed normal. No broken sky, no double, no whispers. But my mother wasn't there either. I called out for her, again and again. No one answered, and when I looked toward the house, I saw the porch light flicker on, and Cece standing in the doorway, holding a candle in one hand and the velvet box in the other. Only now, the box was empty. I didn't leave the house for days after that night, not because I couldn't, but because I didn't know how to return to normal. What even was normal after something like that? I walked around in silence, staring at things like they might speak or shift or vanish. The air inside the house felt different, lighter in some ways, but hollow too, like something important had left with the ring. Cece didn't ask where I had gone or what had happened. She just handed me a warm cup of tea the next morning and told me I looked older. I didn't respond. I think we both knew something had passed between us that neither of us could explain. Not in words, at least. The strange thing was, Cece had changed too. She wasn't as sharp, wasn't constantly walking the house with her Bible and her muttered warnings. She moved slower, spoke less. And one morning I found her standing in front of my mother's old photo with tears running silently down her cheeks. I wanted to ask if she had seen her too, if maybe some piece of my mother had come back with me, but I didn't. Some questions felt too heavy to ask out loud. I couldn't stop thinking about the ring, how it felt when it bonded to me, how it burned, how it whispered things I didn't understand, and most of all, how it shattered. Cece never mentioned it again. The velvet box stayed on the fireplace mantel, now just a reminder of everything we had lost and everything we still didn't know. I would catch myself staring at it sometimes, half expecting the ring to reappear. It never did. A few weeks later, I found myself walking the field behind the house again. Everything looked normal. The grass was tall and soft. The trees swayed gently in the breeze. But I knew this wasn't the same place I had stood that night. The version I'd seen had been twisted, warped by something older than grief or memory. Still, a part of me hoped I'd see her again, my mother, even just for a second. But the field stayed quiet. By the end of the summer, I had packed my bags and stood by the front door with a strange mix of relief and dread. Cece gave me a small notebook wrapped in twine. She didn't explain what it was, only said, "Some of our stories don't get spoken out loud, but that doesn't mean they shouldn't be remembered." I nodded and tucked it into my backpack. As I walked to the car, she called out to me softly. I turned. She looked frail, but strong, standing in the doorway, like a statue. "You'll feel the pull again someday," she said. "Just remember, you can always choose." That night, back at home, I couldn't sleep. Everything around me felt too bright, too modern, too clean. The city lights outside my window didn't comfort me anymore. I missed the creaking floors, the smell of sage and old wood, even Cece's cryptic silences. But most of all, I missed the sense of connection, no matter how dark or strange it had been. Because for the first time in my life, I had felt like I belonged to something ancient, something terrifying, something real. The dreams didn't stop, they just changed. My mother no longer stood with her back to me. She faced me now. She didn't speak, but her eyes were calm, peaceful, like she had made her choice. And now, I had made mine. Sometimes, late at night, the phone rings. When I pick up, there's no sound, just silence. And I wonder, for just a moment, if it's her again, if she's trying to tell me something, or if she's watching. I never say anything. I just listen, my hand resting on the mark where the ring used to be. I never took it off again. Not really. Even without it, something stayed with me. A memory, a link, a thread connecting me to all the women before me. A story passed down not in words, but in silence and shadow. And now, when I dream, I no longer run. I walk forward, because I know that whatever is waiting at the end of that field, it's part of me now, whether I asked for it or not.